So if you look on your schedule, a few pages in, there's a sheet that says submitting to one another. Don't you think we overuse the part about wives submit to your husbands?
Yeah.
When it says submit to one another? All the ladies are singing amen. Absolutely. It says we're to submit to one another, and the scripture passage I put in the notes there, it does begin at Ephesians 5:22, which is every guy's refrigerator verse, right? Wives, submit to your husbands. But if you go further up the passage, like to verse 16, 17, 18, which we're not going to do, it does talk about, speaking to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, like talking nice to each other, having a melody in your heart, and then submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. So that's really the foundation. That's really the key further up in Ephesians. But so submitting to one another is what it's all about, and that takes humility. That was my tweet today. My hashtag was "Be a humble Valentine." Isn't that a great hashtag? Be a humble Valentine. It's on my Twitter account. On the Twitter. He's still on the Twitter. Okay, I'm off the Twitter. All right, Ephesians 5. Starting in verse 22, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is head of the wife. As also Christ is head of the church, he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church, gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having a spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. I'll just insert as a side note here that all of my life I've struggled to love myself. One of the strongholds that the Lord's been dismantling for me is the stronghold of shame. And when you can't love yourself, it's much more difficult to love someone else. I've gotten great victories over the years over this. I just read another book last week, read it twice actually, on shame. Excellent book on shame. Because I just can't leave myself alone sometimes. If you ever struggle with shame, or perfectionism, or it's never quite good enough, and you're always second-guessing, and etc., then you know what it is to get victory over that. Because it's really nice to leave yourself alone for a change, and actually believe that God accepts you too. Really, really critical in marriage. So to love my wife as I love myself could be dangerous if it's laced with shame or some such similar attitude like that. So I've been after this bugger for a long time, gotten great victories over it. I wouldn't be up here talking to you if I didn't have victory over it. And so that's another, just a little side note, that to love my wife as I love myself is a whole other side trail of the message. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. We're members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is a great mystery. That's why it takes so long to figure out marriage. It's not just a mystery, it's a great mystery. This is a great mystery. I mean, Paul said it. It really is. It's a great mystery. But he says, I'm not only talking about human beings, I'm talking about Christ and the church. And that escalates and it throws it up there to a whole new realm of impact that he likens earthly marriage to Christ and his bride. And that's the piece we've got to see. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Nevertheless, let each of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. So our wives need to be loved. In the next session, we'll be talking about his needs, her needs, and girls are all about love. They want to feel secure, loved, etc. And guys are more into respect, into honor, being honored, than they are, with hearts and X's and O's and all that stuff. I mean, when a wife signs a card like that, it's cool, it's nice, but it's like but they really go for that stuff, right? We were in Bible school. I couldn't afford flowers. Oh, that's her story. Okay, sorry.
It's my story.
Okay, I was about to tell a story. That's her story. We'll tell it or later. So it's all about respect for us guys, and that's why we love the love and respect group that we do at IHOP, because guys really need to be unconditionally respected, just like wives need to be unconditionally loved. You wives want unconditional love. No matter what your performance is like, no matter what kind of mood you're in, just love me. You say to your husbands, just love me, just take me in your arms, just make me feel secure, help me, pray for me, intercede for me. And likewise, the guys need unconditional respect. So both ways it's got to be unconditional. So the message for husbands here is crystal clear. Letter A. They are to do for their wives what Jesus did for all of us. He gave himself up for us to bring us into union with himself. Guys, this is your job. Every guy agree? Pretty clear, right? So, the marriage isn't really gelling as it should. We don't seem to have the same kind of unity. What's up with her? The guy says. But really, the key is do what Jesus did for us. Give himself up to bring us into union with himself. Guys, we're the key to unity. If we're laying our lives down, like Christ, it'll bring unity into our marriage. No matter how she is. So the husband then is the Christ figure. The Christ figure, the husband is the burden bearer. That's the Christ figure in the marriage. The servant leader in the relationship. He's to give unconditional love, and if the wife wants to make his job easier, then she is to give him unconditional respect, even when he may not be doing the best job. He needs that. And so together, each spouse draws closer to Christ in order to be empowered to love and respect one another. And you've all, I'm sure, seen the illustration of the triangle, right? The two corner pieces of the triangle, and then it goes up. The side goes up, and each spouse starting at the bottom of the triangle, and as they go up towards the Lord, they get closer to each other. Y'all see that illustration? So as both get closer to the Lord, they get closer to each other. So the one flesh union. One flesh union. Living in a one flesh union is the mirror in which I see my heart issues. It's one of the reasons why you're married. And as I said last session, if you were single, God would find another way to probe your heart. But that's the mirror in which we see our heart issues, the one flesh union. The union means to be joined together as one. It's very close in definition to the word abide. I'm abiding with Anne. I am in union with her. One flesh union. And so abide means to remain as one. Not to become another. And this is God's intent for marriage. And another word that comes into play when we think about abiding, we think about John chapter 15. And getting ahead of myself here, sorry. Wrong page of my notes. The deeper bridal union, letter B, I'm sorry. So we're called to take up our cross and follow Jesus every day in our marriage. And I like to paraphrase that by saying when we need to take up our dying. Taking up our cross is, the cross is kind of a symbol. We wear our cross. We understand the cross. And Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. Say, okay, I've done that. Okay, you did that. How about yesterday? How about today? How about tomorrow? So instead of take up my cross it like as a symbol, I like to think of it as take up our dying. And the close quarters of the married life probes me. It just probes me. Usually at some point in time, every week. I can't say every day, but every week something happens that irritates my flesh. And it's on my end. It's not even something that's horrible that Ann did. But I have to die to a whole lot. Anybody else have to die? So that's normal life. That's a normal Christian life. Take up your dying and follow me. But it's worth it because of the life that we have. A couple of years ago, I was about to speak at a singles workshop, and I heard the words of my spirit. I heard these words, that my heart is still in process unto a deeper bridal union. My heart is still in process unto a deeper bridal union. And I instantly knew, and I told the singles that day, that it was a twofold thing I felt the Lord saying to me. One is my heart as I relate to the Lord Jesus. A deeper bridal union. Yes, Lord, I want to go deeper in you. I want our union, our relationship, to be more vibrant, to be at a deeper level. So deeper bridal union vertically. But I also knew it meant with my spouse, a deeper bridal union horizontally with my one flesh partner. And that's also a process. And so it's vertically and horizontally a deeper bridal union. He will always use one as a teaching point for the other. He'll use something about your relationship with himself, the Lord will, to teach you about your marriage. He'll use something in your marriage to teach you about himself. It goes both ways. And so, my friendship, a relationship with Christ, over the past, it was just 39 years ago I came to know him. It's gone deeper. It's been a deeper bridal union. There are days when I feel like, I do know you, Lord. I know I do. Even though I've been feeling a certain way for the past few weeks, I know that I know you. It's not always tangible, but it's deep, and we have to persevere in it. And the same thing with almost 33 years this way, with this beautiful woman here. With its little ups and downs. Our graph has not been the stock market. It's been little things up and down. Everybody has those. But there's so much more. I actually don't know everything about this woman. Nor does she know everything about me. I'm not talking about what's your favorite food. But just deep things of the heart. Because we're also both always changing. So it's good to ask, are you the newest you? Do I know the latest you? Right? So, we are not the most romantic couple in terms of things. And I think things are wonderful. I really do. I'm not a Hallmark conspiracy. But we're not huge on cards. She's not huge on flowers or gifts. Those things are not wrong by any means. But what we do spend a lot of time doing for each other is talking about our heart condition, connecting. And that's what makes the union go deeper and deeper and deeper. Through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Stay connected. Stay connected. And you'll go deeper. Letter C. Zeal for your spouse will not automatically draw you closer to Christ. But zeal for Christ will always draw you closer to your spouse. So again, all the things we can do for our wives, all the romance, all that stuff is great. But you can rev that engine all you want. It won't bring you closer to Christ. But if you go hard after Jesus, little prayer, little fasting, little study, and you grow in your zeal for Him, you will intuitively just love your spouse in a different way. You'll just be an intuitive thing. You'll say, wow, since I did that little fasting and praying and really went after God, I've really been a different husband. I feel like, boy, I've been a better husband. I'm doing all right. Of course, obviously it's all Jesus. But that's a guarantee, I believe. It'll always draw you closer to your spouse. So the entire process is Christ-centered. And we live on these parallel tracks. Going deeper in God will always bless my marriage. And then going deeper in my marriage somehow also encourages my heart to go deeper in God. Like when she blesses me, when she shows me respect and honors me no matter how I'm performing, that gives me a little more like confidence and stamina to, I'm going to go after God again. So it's a wonderful, wonderful cycle how that works. Letter D, in most cases, every marriage problem is a God problem. I've never had a couple come before me for counseling where the husband and the wife were both in revival with spiritual lives really going strong, and they're coming in because they're on the verge of divorce and they can't make it work. Never. So if each spouse takes care of their life before God, their life together will be not a piece of cake, but a slice of pie. Something. It'll be decent. It'll be smooth. And so every marriage problem, I found pretty much, every marriage problem is a God problem. And I said it before, the core issue in your marriage is the same thing you'd be dealing with if you were single. It's not her that caused your anger problem. She's not the root of your anger issue. And he's not the root of your poor self-esteem. Whatever it is. And so this Ephesians 5 mystery is all about a deeper bridal union. I advise singles all the time to use this as a mirror to evaluate prospective partners. The union, or the deep connect that your girlfriend or boyfriend has with Jesus will be the foundation of your marriage. So you better check them out and kind of just find out. Not just when the pop quiz comes, they can pass that test easy, but observation, little discernment. Because how they're doing in that union, have they gone deep with Jesus? That's going to be the foundation of your marriage. Letter E, who you are as a disciple will determine who you are as a marriage partner. Does that make sense? Who you are as a disciple will determine who you are as a marriage partner. Oftentimes in our marriage, we'll just ring the bell and we'll send ourselves to our respective quarters. You go to your prayer closet, you go to your prayer closet. Because this discussion that we're having, sort of, kind of a discussion or whatever, it's not going to go very well. So far it isn't. Let's both get a little refreshed in prayer. And we'll come back at it later in the afternoon or maybe tomorrow. So who you are as a disciple, getting that renewed, getting back to your prayer closet, being married then in a Christ-centered way, ultimately leads to transformation. And then as we both change and mature, people take notice. And your marriage will then become a witness to the gospel. The reason why you're married is for your marriage to be a witness. It's one of the prime reasons. It's not just so you can get your house paid off, get the kids out of the house, have a decent retirement, have a decent vehicle, and wait for the second coming. I fall into that sometimes. I have my checklist. So how am I doing here? How am I doing here? Okay, check. We're making progress there. Some of that stuff's okay. But the primary thing has got to be, I want in on this mystery. I want in on this mystery of Ephesians 5. How is Christ and the church and my earthly marriage connected? I want to know all the ins and outs of that. And so, when you look at the way God felt about divorce in the Old Testament, I read Pastor Carl's book recently. He does a great job in unpacking Malachi and how it's treachery. Divorce is treacherous. It's a violent act. Think abortion in the marriage realm. That's divorce. That's exactly what it is. It's a ripping apart. It's a tearing apart of life. That's how God feels about it. Been that way for a long time. Still is today. But again, our culture has kind of, it's like air pollution. We are breathing this air. Unless you are one of those people that always walk around with the mask. God bless them, they need to do that because of what they're going through. But it's affecting us in a subtle way. So your marriage is called to be a witness. So if a person observes your marriage or my marriage for a certain period of time, somehow that's what I call being a prophetic witness of Christ in the church. You mean if they observe me and my wife over a period of time and how we interact with each other, that somehow that will be a witness of the gospel? That's it. In a nutshell. That's why you're married. I guess we need to get some strategy then. How exactly are we going to do this? And I'll tell you something you already know. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of young couples or soon-to-be young couples that are going to be in need of mentoring. I mentioned this before, I know. But it's so critical. It's like, who's going to take them under their wings? So they can see what a solid marriage is like. Not a perfect marriage, but they can see what a solid marriage is like. And it's so critical for us to see that. But John chapter 15, I love the abiding chapter here. Jesus says, abide in me, I in you. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. By this my Father is glorified. So again, you bear fruit in your marriage, it glorifies God. Your marriage is for the glory of God. We are married for the glory of God. Are you living your individual life for the glory of God?
Yes.
Are you married for the glory of God? Yeah. Of course. Both individuals are living for his glory, so is your marriage. Bear much fruit, prove to be my disciples. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. So again, union, abiding, very similar definitions. Abide means to remain as one, not to become another. Remain as one, not to become another. And this is God's intention also for marriage. And the one word that we see in this passage that's woven in here is the word pruning. Pruning. It's the wonderful process of God getting the dead branches, the non-fruit-bearing branches, out of the way to make room for more fruit. I imagine us praying to God for more fruit. Yes, Lord, I love John 15. I want to bear much fruit to glorify you, Abba. I want to bear much fruit. I want to prove to be your disciple. More fruit, Lord, more fruit. It's a great prayer. But I think when you pray that prayer, by the time it travels through all those galaxies and reaches heaven, somehow it gets into the main computer terminals there, and the message that they end up sending to the throne is, prune me. Prune me. Refine me. Send fire, Lord. I was just praying for more fruit. So we all know that connection, don't we? I think it was Bill Johnson that said that pruning is the reward for being fruitful. That's a great concept. Pruning is the reward for being fruitful. Yes, you can bear more fruit. I want to be a lover of God, that actually brings joy to me. I can be a whiner and a complainer as well as any of you. Just saying. We all have those days. But I really, 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 in my heart of hearts, I want to bear more fruit for God in my personal life and in my marriage. That requires pruning. So abiding brings fruit and joy, full joy. Pruning. And then abiding, more fruit. Oh, it was worth it. That last fire was worth it. And then more joy, higher level. And then pruning. Etc. Right? It's going to go something like that, at least in my life. And I'm always amazed. I'm getting better, though. After 39 years of being a Christian and being 60 years old now, I am coming to a place where I'm getting used to it. And I'm starting to really understand His ways. I really am. I'm encouraged by that. And even more ridiculous, letter C, even more ridiculous is the notion that marriage is responsible for these dead branches being in my life in the first place. Somehow or other, they weren't there before, and now they are, so it must be my spouse's fault. Nice try. Believe it or not, we're all sitting here in a comfortable conference room, but out there in the battlefield, living day to day, in our houses and the workplace, the devil uses this strategy. She's the reason for your trials. You were doing really good spiritually before you. He brought out dead branches in. He's the reason. She's the reason. If you divorce her and find someone else, things will lighten up for you. You'll have more joy. I mean, that's part of his strategy. He's so diabolical and disgusting. But he really uses this line. I know none of us in this room is stupid enough to fall for that, right? I'm going to skip down to letter E, back to Ephesians 5. The profound mystery, the two becoming one flesh. I consider my union with Christ inseparable, as I do my marriage. We are inseparable by choice because I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. Everybody else with me on that? Yeah. There's no one else to follow, in my opinion. I pledged covenant to my spouse. What God has joined together, let no man separate. I look at both unions the same. I look at both unions the same. You may have been stunned a time or two, as I have, by hearing about a certain person that you know forsaking their Christian faith. And you're like, him? Jim did that? He's what? The guy that was rock solid on fire, and they separate from Christ, and they kind of just modify their faith, sort of, and incorporate other stuff in there. It's like, are they really saved? How can you break apart from an abiding relationship, a one-flesh relationship with Jesus Christ? How do you separate from that one-flesh union, that abiding relationship, and now you're not together with Jesus? In Christian divorces, I hate that combination of words. In Christian divorces, one or both spouses have ceased to abide. They've ceased to obey the Word of God, and they've forfeited eternal fruit for the gamble of temporal pleasure. How do you go from being one spirit with the Lord? 1 Corinthians chapter 6, he who's joined in the Lord is one spirit with him. He who's joined in the Lord is one spirit with him. He who's joined in the Lord is one spirit with him. Wow. How do you go from being one spirit with the Lord to not being one spirit? And how do you go from being one flesh with your spouse to not being one flesh with your spouse? And so to some degree, the earthly marriage, it mirrors the heavenly. The heavenly marriage is, Peter describes as corruption is putting on incorruption. That's how we were born again, by the incorruptible word of God. And corruption is putting on incorruption. That's your salvation. It's awesome, isn't it? Corruption is putting on incorruption. I've got to change more. Lewis, I got to be more godly. I know you think I'm great now, but there's got to be more. Dang, there's got to be more. Corruption's putting on incorruption. I know ultimately sort of where that's going with a heavenly body, but I want more now. And I have to say that my earthly marriage has a vital, strategic role in this. And somehow, it's still a mystery to me, but corruption putting on incorruption involves this little 5 foot, whatever she is, skinny thing. Is a part of that process. Strategic part. Probably the most important human part of it. Your spouse is the most important human component in your salvation being worked out. Working out your salvation with fear and trembling. Your spouse is the most important human component in that process. Him? Yeah, him. Her? Absolutely. Even on their worst day. Especially on their worst day. All right. Move on here. I might get in trouble. All right, Roman numeral 4. I like this concept of what I call apostolic character. I'm not talking about the title of an apostle at all. I'm talking about character. Married couples are thrust in the crucible. Talked about fire before. Because they cannot possibly avoid the death to self that living intimately with one person entails. Singles are thrust in the crucible because they cannot possibly avoid the death to self that is required in surrendering their desire for marriage into God's sovereign will. So the singles are in the crucible of, I'm not married yet. And you're in the crucible of, I'm married. Right? Both are fiery environments. But on the other hand, I'll say this for some godly singles that I know. There are some singles that I know that give a greater witness and a greater testimony of the bridal paradigm than many married couples. It's the deeper process of the heart that emits the bridal fragrance, not a marriage license. Amen. It's the alabaster box getting broken open. We do that in our house, don't we, honey? And we don't say, let's break open a new alabaster box. All right, you pick the next fight. You pick the next fire. We'll get it going. No. It happens just naturally, like a tree growing, like grass growing. It kind of happens, and all of a sudden, before you know it, there's a little fire, a little this and that going on, and transformation, and I smell a new fragrance in the house. Hallelujah. Yeah. Something's been broken open. Yeah. It's a deeper process of the heart. And some singles emit that fragrance, that bridal union, I'll call it fragrance, better than some married couples. Now, if I was the coach of a team, I'd say, are we going to let them singles show us up? Come on! No. All right. A little locker room shouting here. Letter B, as we seek to fulfill God's calling and destiny for our marriage, it's maturity we're after. And I use the term apostolic as relating to a character quality of maturity, or to describe one who carries an inward spiritual authority. Apostolic character is the fabric of a deeper union. It gives off a mature fragrance. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I know I'm using a term that's probably not a common term, apostolic, character, but maturity. I want my marriage to give that off somehow, in a very naturally, supernatural type of way. And so when I transitioned from becoming a single disciple to now I'm a married disciple, my desire to live for God, to be zealous for holiness, and to want to glorify Him, it's still there. I had it when I was a single disciple. I'm trying to maintain it as a married disciple. I didn't forfeit my destiny. She didn't forfeit her destiny. We just joined forces. And when you get married, you don't stop being a single person. Sometimes we subconsciously think that the other person's going to carry the load now. And we're riding kind of in their draft, we're just being carried. That doesn't last long. So we both still have our own garden of the heart to tend, and our own walk with God to maintain, and we're still going hard by His grace. Letter C is a quote from Asher Intrater, Jewish brother, wonderful brother. He said, "We should be drawn towards someone else to the degree that we see that person walking with God. It is God inside the person that attracts us to Him." I have one married child, 2 single. And to those 2 single ones, I would say, read this. What's that person's walk with God like? That's really what should be the drawing towards someone else. And it also holds true with friendships. Because you can kind of grow dull by hanging around the wrong kind of people. Now, aside from God commissioning you to go befriend somebody, that's a mission. But I'm saying just in friendships, who you allow into your inner circle, it should be someone that's going to be edifying. One who lives in submission to God will have a fairly easy transition into submitting to their spouse. And again, that's the parallel tracks we've been talking about. So the person that's living in submission to God, has a tender heart, laying down their life to the Lord, they won't, they'll be more prone to do that with their spouse. Letter E, I referred to briefly before, about being filled with the Spirit, and psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. That's one of my favorite things about my wife, is that she has a melody in her heart. Sometimes it drives me crazy. I tend to be a melancholic personality. I tend to want to be sad sometimes. And I'm a slow starter in the morning. I get up, it's like, in my mind I'm like just cobwebs and dull, and what is there to be happy about yet today? She, see that hand? And she is like, "Morning, huh?" She's got this smile, but she really means it. It's not fake. It's really sincere. And it's like, sometimes her joy drives me nuts. So single or married, letter F, everyone's calling is to be filled with the Spirit on a regular basis. Amen? That's everyone's calling, is to be filled with the Spirit on a regular basis. And this is all Ephesians 5:18 through 21. That comes before the other famous passage. But really, being filled with the Spirit is a big, big key in marriage. edifying speech, the inner melody, being thankful, having a servant heart. Every marriage will be blessed if these traits are manifested. It's really pretty simple. And I call this the marriage soundtrack. This is the soundtrack for every marriage. This is your song. This is my song. Having that songs, hymns, spiritual songs, making melody in your heart. So if you're making it and your spouse is making it, put those melodies together. Who wants to divorce? Right? Number 5, 2 vacuums. So here's the worldly formula. 2 people, unsure of their own value and purpose, find significance and meaning in one another's arms. And then the movie ended. And you leave AMC and you go home. Well, in reality, when you add 2 vacuums together, you get a larger vacuum. We've seen lots of marriages that had these expectations of the other person completing them because they found their soulmate. Now I'm going to be happy that I found this person. And a lot of times it's just another vacuum with another vacuum, and you get a bigger vacuum. That's why a Christ-centered marriage is essential. Amen. Jesus is the first one I go to. And it's the first one she goes to. So we try and meet at that juncture. You've been there, I've been there, okay. Let's talk about Jesus, what we're learning, what's going on in our hearts. And then the fleshly part of our relationship, the other stuff just flows. So be filled with the Spirit. Find your significance and meaning in the arms of God. And as Anne mentioned before in her message, that if one spouse is having a really, really difficult time, and they're like, I just can't get to that place, I don't know how to do it, and that spouse needs an individual counseling for their own heart. Bearing reproach. Romans 15. We who are strong have an obligation to bear with the failings of the weak and not to please ourselves. Let each of us please his neighbor for his good, to build him up. For Christ did not please himself, but as it is written, the reproaches of those who reproached you fell on me. Another translation says, I took on the troubles of the troubled. So bearing reproach is a Christ action that we're all called to do, every believer. And every husband and wife will have seasons of bearing reproach in their marriage. Here's what I mean. Think of it like you married your spouse and then you found out she has student loans. Bummer. Or he has student loans. And so now you have to bear that reproach. You have to carry that weight. It wasn't yours, but you're married now. So I was like, oh, we'll pay it off. We'll work on it. How about emotional student loans? When we were dating and everything, we seemed to be pretty well adjusted, happy most of the time. Now that we've been married for 2 years, you got issues. And now you're one. Now you're abiding as one, never to be separated. Bearing reproach is going to be a part of marriage. It's that thing that he or she, a combination of can or won't, change something, and it's some baggage. It's kind of like sort of what Jesus did for the planet. And what he still does. He's carrying an awful lot for us. And so to some degree, we do that in our marriage. Another thing I found too is that in our premarital counseling, no matter whether you do 4 sessions or 12 sessions, You can do 24 sessions. I'll say this, my personal opinion on this, is God does not turn over every stone during the engagement. It's impossible. Some are marked year 1, year 6, year 12. Yeah. They're marked for development down the line of your marriage. You would not be able to humanly handle everything being turned over. And we're not going to get married until we cover everything. Okay, we'll try. Go to Lewis and go 12 sessions, 8:24. That's the beauty of bearing reproach. It's just like, being willing to carry whatever your spouse has, whoever your spouse is. We bored each other with our stories so many times. And she thought, Mike would get over that thing in his life. And I thought, I wish he is still struggling with that. Gosh. Sometimes it leaks out in words. Occasionally. And that's okay. That's okay. That's nobody likes to talk about, bearing reproach is not going to be the sermon title that sells out back at the table. Those bearing reproach CDs sold out. That's a popular message. Everybody wants that. How can I bear more reproach? I was talking to a friend of mine, Bob Sorge. He's a great writer, written like 20-some books, lives at IHOP. And he was at our house in New York one time. He was speaking at our church, and he lost his voice like 15, 16 years ago. He talks to it with a whisper, and he said that it was a reproach in his life, not to be able to talk. It's very reproach. He can't talk to his wife, can't talk to his kids, his grandkids. So God channeled him into a writing ministry, but it's not what he wanted. Lost his voice in a worship conference, and the doctors made some mistake in surgery. And so he was telling me about reproach, and I thought, wow. When you can't change something about yourself, you can't change something about your spouse, and the thing is just there. It could be an addiction. It could be a number of things. That's bearing reproach. To some degree, we're called to do that. I mean, sin makes it happen ultimately. God doesn't design or create reproach necessarily, but it's something we're called to bear. And Psalm 69, I'm not going to read that, but Jesus fulfilled that on the cross for us. And so all believers are called to this. If we only came alongside to help the people that were nice to help, that were clean, weren't too messed up or dirty, weren't too much of a project, we have to be really selective, wouldn't we? I'm glad someone chose to help me when I was a lost 21-year-old drunk, druggie, working in a factory. So to be able to be this kind of a spouse, we need to be filled with the Spirit on a regular basis. To just bear whatever it is in our marriage.